Why are villains so idolized in this world? If we were to assume that the stories didn't change in this world, why does the school and its students idolize who they call the Great Seven? Each dorm idolizes them in some way, and leaders act like them too. Riddle acts like the Queen of Hearts and so forth. Did the stories get twisted so the villains are seen in a better light? I really liked this post. I thought that it sparked a really interesting discussion. Someone said, basically, yeah, whatever the villains did in their original world became the opposite or twisted of what actually happened, hence the title. Someone else said, of course, it should also be remembered that they are in-universe historical figures, so just like in many cases IRL, it's likely that some of their lesser misdeeds were either ignored, hidden, or simply lost to time, which would certainly change how people see them. I totally agree. I think in episode 2 they really started to touch on that, but I think it's mostly up to interpretation from the reader. Someone else said, I think it's a combination of the Great Seven not being full-on villains in this alternate universe, and the things they did being tinted as good thanks to the lens of history or particular aspects of their stories being forgotten or hidden potentially. Yeah, I think that kind of how history goes, and people are revisionist and they pick and choose the things that they want to share about certain historical figures. Christopher Columbus. Someone else said, as time goes on, fact becomes history and history becomes legend. My best guess is that history fading into obscurity and the game of historical telephone made it so what actually happened got twisted, and so their victims were forgotten and the villains slowly became the good guys and idolized. Yeah, I definitely think it's a game of telephone where these stories just kept getting passed down through different people who wanted to hear better of the villains, and then they just ended up becoming like the good guys, or more of just like a neutral, powerful figure rather than someone who was good or evil. Someone else said, the mirror visions we see are the canonical versions of events, so I lean toward the idea that basically the stories got distorted in the telling over time, and the history idealized the characters in emphasizing their good qualities and downplaying their flaws. Yeah, that's what the other person was saying, which never ever happens in real life /s. I mean, as a real world example, Columbus got venerated for a really long time. Yeah, I was just bringing up Christopher Columbus, despite the fact that even his contemporaries were horrified by his actions. Another person said, I like that the bad qualities of the villains are often spun to be decent attributes or strengths, i.e. Azul is a shrewd businessman, even if his contracts require a very careful look at the fine print. Yeah, I think that the way that Twisted twists the original inspiration is really interesting for each of the characters. Someone else said, well, there is some debate on why the NRC idolized the villains, but my best guess is that Twisted Wonderland is an alternative future where the events of the story did happen, but as time went on, people in the world of Twisted Wonderland saw things through the villain's point of view and believed what they did was a good thing, even if the deed was pure evil. I think that would be interesting if history was passed down as if it was seen through the villain's eyes, and that's their perspective of what happened. I think we would get a very different story, especially from the Great Seven. There's more to this thread, and I think it goes into a really great conversation, but what do you guys think?